Hey, how's it going everyone? Carlo here from All You Can Board, and today I'm going to be doing a pretty exciting video here that I've been looking forward to, which is basically the future of KeyForge. So for those of you who have been playing KeyForge or who might have been curious about jumping into the game, you might know that the game has kind of been in a bit of a, I don't want to call it a dead state, but kind of in a bit of a, let's call it a purgatory state for a little bit here, just because mainly due to the pandemic, there hasn't been any or as many like in-store events and that kind of thing. And also just there was a bit of, spacing between the last set, Dark Tidings, and the previous one. And a lot of us have kind of been waiting for a while for some news. I am a bit late to release this video. I apologize for that, but I did become a dad about 5 or 6 weeks ago now. So I've been extremely busy. I wanted to come over to Dylan's place here and do this video a little while ago. But basically, we are going to be talking about the future of KeyForge, mostly based off of the recent announcement, which many of you might have already heard from Fantasy Flight Games. And then at the end, we'll kind of talk a little bit about the future of the game outside of that announcement. So we're going to start by talking about the first thing that was that Final Fantasy Games announcement, which was called Down But Not Out. You can see it on their website. We'll actually try and remember to put a link in the description below in case you want to check it out. But basically, they came out and said that the game is going to be temporarily on hiatus. They were apologizing for not really announcing, having any updates about upcoming sets or the state of the game and that kind of thing. And the main reason for that is because their algorithm, which is what is used to basically, procedurally generate all their decks, is broken. Now, there wasn't really a lot of, info. They didn't really get into it, which, to be fair, it doesn't really matter what broke the algorithm for us players and, fans of the game, people who might be interested in jumping into the game. Why it broke isn't really that important, but I know people were kind of rabid online talking about all kinds of rumors, speculating, oh, someone was, angry person left the company and destroyed the algorithm and all this kind of stuff. Some of these just made me laugh because, some of them just seemed a little ridiculous and also kind of unfounded. Like some of the rumors were just people saying it without any type of background knowledge or any type of source or any proper reasoning. Credit to one user I saw on Reddit. I can't remember the user's name or what the post was called exactly, but it was someone who was a former software developer who actually had a really well thought out, reasoned speculation. They said specifically, hey, I'm not saying this is what happened, but they basically, I won't get into it. You can go check it out yourself. Basically saying that there was something in the programming that kind of made it, that from the mass mutation with the enhancements that kind of ruined the coding. And I thought, oh, maybe that is a legitimate reasoning or a good enough theory kind of thing. But ultimately, a gentleman named Stephen Buonocore, who many of you might be familiar with, he, I believe, is now retired from his official standing in the board game industry, but he used to be the CEO and owner of Stronghold Games, or at least the head of Stronghold Games. And basically, he was on a podcast recently called Board Game Insider, and he mentioned that he has a source very close to him and very close to KeyForge, or possibly in KeyForge, who basically confirmed that the algorithm was broken due to a ransomware attack. So what this means is that, some hacker or hackers reached out to Fantasy Flight Game and said we've got a hold of your server, and basically, pay us this much money, otherwise say goodbye to KeyForge kind of thing. And, they didn't really get too much into this. Obviously, he's not going to reveal his source or anything like that, but he was basically confirming this. Doesn't sound like it's much of a rumor. Stephen Buonocore, also known as the Podfather, he has the Podfather podcast. He isn't the type to just kind of make up something like that to stir up controversy. So it's unfortunate this has happened, but at the same time, I'm sure people are kind of conflicted on this, right? You think, what was the cost being set by these hackers, and, what is FFG losing out on by not having paid the cost, whatever? People say, good, you shouldn't be negotiating with terrorists and all this kind of stuff, and you can't let them win, and who cares if you have to rebuild from the ground up? But yeah, so basically this is where we're at now, and FFG, when they released this announcement, they kept saying over and over in there, just kind of emphasizing that down but not out, right? The game is going to relaunch in a big way. It is just a hiatus. It's going to be coming back bigger than ever, better than ever kind of thing. And it's easy as a passionate person for the game. I know there were a lot of people posting threads saying, oh, how come they didn't back up their servers? Or this is, I'm kind of pissed off. I just got into the game and now my decks feel useless. Or what about the decks I bought from before? They've already reassured everyone this doesn't, affect anything you had from the game before. All your previous decks are still playable. Everything, isn't lost in the the KeyForge game, like online database where you have your decks kind of like saved in or anything like that. It's basically just that they can't currently generate any new decks. So they did offer some really positive tidbits to go with this because they didn't want it to just be all bad news. So the biggest thing was that there's a new set announced called the Winds of Exchange. So they said right in the announcement there that it's already completely developed. So I take that to mean that they've already, made all of the cards. They've already, basically all the cards are ready. The set is ready to go. It's been tested. It's just that they can't actually, I think they even said in there that basically if it wasn't for the broken algorithm, the set would be either out already or coming out right away and they would just be printing decks. But they have to rebuild the algorithm in order to be able to do that. But there's a lot of exciting stuff that I want to kind of focus on now that, we're past a bit of the negative with the broken algorithm. So there's going to be a new house announced. At first, they kind of teased just the symbol, and people didn't know, there's been talks for a little while because up to this point in the 5 sets, up to Dark Tidings, which was the most recent one, there have been 10 houses in KeyForge so far, but there's been hints through some of the KeyForge literature out there about 2 other houses, the Skyborn and the Inspired, I believe they're called, which people were speculating for a while. Oh, those are going to be the 11th and 12th houses, and then out of nowhere comes this other house now called the Compact of Equidon. So that's Ekwidon, Equidon. So this was kind of completely out of left field. They are now officially going to be the 11th house, and they're a house that's sort of, they're branding them as like the mercantile house. So a lot of like, trading and exchanging kind of things. So that, again, the name of the set is Winds of Exchange. So what I also want to touch on here is not only is there going to be this new house, but there's going to be a huge shift in the the Winds of Exchange, the new set. There's going to be a huge shift in which houses are involved. So if you're familiar with KeyForge, if you've been following since the start of the game, you'll know that the 3 houses that have been around since the very beginning in all 5 sets are Logos, Shadows, and Untamed. Personally, I absolutely love Logos. I did a KeyForge house rankings video a little while ago. I'll try to remember to link it up here in case any of you want to click on it and check it out. I won't maybe spoil exactly where they were on my list, but very, very high up. Absolutely love Logos as a house. I really enjoyed Shadows as well. Untamed, hit or miss for me. I've enjoyed playing with that house sometimes, but not all the time. And it kind of changes from set to set for me. I feel like it's really interesting that these 3 houses are all leaving for this new set for the Winds of Exchange. So no more Logos, no more Shadows, and no more Untamed. All 3 of the houses that have been around since the start are all gone. So what's happening is Dis that was out from Dark Tidings is still staying out as well. Sanctum's coming back. Brobnar is coming back. And the best news for me is the long-awaited return of Mars, which, honestly, if Mars had been in more sets in the game, they'd probably be my favorite house. After the first set called the Archons, they were my favorite house. I just love the way that Mars plays. I love the artwork, the names, the flavor text, just the style of play. They have these crazy synergies where all the cards kind of play off each other a lot. They are kind of inconsistent at times. Sometimes people would get a deck with Mars and say like, oh, that deck's terrible because the Mars doesn't work. Or in my opinion, they were probably the trickiest house to make work on a regular basis. And especially in Age of Ascension, the second set, they definitely were weaker, and they sometimes, there's certain cards in there that in Mars that are so situational that in some decks they can be really fun and really powerful, but then in other decks sometimes you feel like this card doesn't do anything for me, or I end up just having to discard it, or like it's a rare but feels like it doesn't really do a whole lot or whatnot. So really excited to see Mars come back. And then, so the houses in this one are going to be Brobnar, Sanctum, Saurians, Star Alliance, Unfathomable, Mars, and then this new house, the Compacts of Equidon. So I do want to touch on quickly, there's been 1 card revealed as a spoiler so far as of the time of filming this, and it is a Mars card called Borka Rick. It is a 4-power creature. It's a rare, and the text, what do you call it, the traits. So a lot of time we've seen like Martian and we've seen Agent and all these kind of things. This one is Martian and it says Rebel, which is a brand new term. I didn't even notice it at first until I was checking out the card a little more closely. And the text on the card is, each time a Mars card is discarded from your hand, make a token creature. So we're going to get to tokens in a second because this is also new in this set. But I just love the artwork on this card. There's all kinds of speculation going on out there. There's a good thread in the KeyForge game subreddit Actually, I want to highlight the flavor text real quick before I talk about that, which was "Join me and the revolution will never die." I just love the artwork too and everything. You kind of wonder what's going on here and why did they choose to only release one card as a spoiler first for not even the new house, but for Mars coming back. Why is there a rebel? What's this revolution that has a capital R? It's not like there's something specific going on there. And yeah, it makes you wonder what's going on. Some people have speculated that this means that there's going to be, the regular Martians that we've seen in the first couple sets, and now there's going to be rebels. Does that mean that there's going to be just rebels in this set, or are there going to be, kind of the previous Martians of Mars and then also the rebels? And are those going to play off of each other some way? Are you going to see specific differences? Are you going to have cards that maybe if you have certain rebels but other Martians that aren't rebels, they, maybe don't work? There's like anti-synergies to offset how good the cards can be maybe. There's all kinds of stuff brewing out there. I'm really excited to hear. If any of you, I still consider myself more a casual KeyForge player than competitive, and the fact that I became a dad however many weeks ago, and because of pandemic and stuff, I haven't actually been able to play as much KeyForge as I'd like, and there's plenty of you who've chimed in on past videos that we've done. A lot of you guys have more knowledge about this game than I do, I fully admit that, and a lot of you are more passionate even than I am and have maybe more time to dive into this. So if you guys know more about this, or if you've seen some interesting speculation, please leave some comments below and let me know. I'd love to chat about this stuff with you guys. So quickly going back to the tokens that appear on this spoiler card. So when Fantasy Flight Games released the previous set, Dark Tidings, it came with that Tide card. So previously all the decks had 37 cards. You had your 36 basic cards, which were 12 from each from 3 houses. And then you had the 37th card, which was your deck list card. Dark Tidings introduced a 38th card, which was for the tide, which had the low tide and the high tide, depending where the card was facing, whether the tide was high for you or your opponent and whatnot. And they mentioned that from now on, I think they said every set going forward is going to have a 38th card now that's going to have some new mechanics, some new abilities. So the tide isn't going to be a thing anymore going forward. So in this set, the 38th card is going to revolve around these tokens. And there's nothing official as far as I know in terms of what the tokens are going to be, what they're going to mean. If you've played other, card games like Magic the Gathering, Hearthstone, that kind of thing, I take it to be that there's, they're basically going to be another creature or something. It might not even be a creature all the time. That's the other thing, is that there's going to be something you can generate. I don't know if that means you're going to take like another card face down from another deck, like you just put something as kind of like a placeholder, like a marker, or if there's going to be official tokens that come with like the, deluxe packs or whatever for this new set. But either way, there's going to be things you can add to the game state that, are tokens, and there's all kinds of speculation again out there. Are there going to be maybe each house has its own type of token. Maybe each house has 2 or 3 or 4 different kinds of tokens. We don't really know. Maybe it's going to depend on the cards that you have. Maybe certain cards that generate tokens in your deck or certain traits of creatures or whatnot have different types of tokens. So then when you have your unique deck and your deck says, it's not going to say create a token that does this on the card. The card will just say, like Borka Rick, you may make a token creature, and then that 38th card will have some sort of explanation as to what a token creature is in that deck. So kind of just speculating. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet, but this is really interesting. I think it's something that, to me, I'm already way more intrigued by this than I was by the Tide mechanic. The Tide mechanic did sound interesting at first, but if you saw my kind of review I did of Dark Tidings as a set, I did mention that it kind of did slow the game down and kind of slowed down the decision-making process, and, especially with having to consider taking 3 chains to raise the tide on your end, and then you're drawing fewer cards, so players are going through their deck slower. It just slowed down the game a lot, and personally, I don't mind it sometimes, but the fact that every time you play with a deck from that set, people are, raising in the tide against each other back and forth. Like, the games did tend to feel like a bit of a slog, and after playing with Dark Tidings a couple times, I'd be like, let's switch it up. I want to try out, Call of the Archons or Mass Mutation, some of these ones that were faster. The tokens, we'll wait and see what happens. Maybe there's something where it's like an aura around it, where you put the token down in the battle line, and then the creatures to the left and right have some sort of, or maybe there's a size of the aura from the token, so it can expand past just the adjacent creatures. Maybe the tokens can be artifacts in other decks. I have no idea. I'm really curious to see what's going to happen here. But that's kind of all we know so far, I think, about this new set, the Winds of Exchange. So now what I want to focus on is something that, in my opinion, is actually the most exciting part that came with this Down But Not Out announcement from Fantasy Flight Games, and that is that KeyForge seems to, I guess there wasn't any, it didn't say they're confirming, they said, I think in their words it was, we very much hope and intend to be releasing an official online platform. And so for some of you might already be familiar, or many of you are probably familiar with the fact that there is an unofficial platform called The Crucible, where you can play KeyForge. It's run by a bunch of volunteers who do amazing, amazing work. They've been so good about, having stuff ready when a new set comes out, making changes. People report, oh, this card doesn't work properly, it kind of bugs out. It's been such a gift to the KeyForge community to have access to something like this to play online in the absence of an official platform. That being said, it's not always fully appealing to play when, certain things aren't automated, right? Like you click a card and then it's asking you which thing do you want to do with this, or which creature do you want to target, or then you do something wrong, you got to go to manual mode. So sometimes, there's little bugs and whatever. And again, I don't want this to sound at all like I'm criticizing the Crucible, because again, for something that is like run by volunteers and it's an unofficial platform from people who aren't even, they don't work for Fantasy Flight Games. They're not involved with KeyForge as a game. It's just people who are passionate about the game, allowing people to play this. It's been awesome. But this online official one is going to be done by a company called Stainless Games, who did Duels of the Planeswalkers, which personally I have not played, but if any of you have, maybe you can tell me a bit more. How is Duels of the Planeswalkers? Is it implemented well? My experience, I haven't played, Dylan and I both used to be pretty into Magic the Gathering when we were teenagers, and we used to play it a lot. Back then there was some other type of online platform. I haven't played Magic the Gathering online. We both were into Hearthstone a while back. We'd play some of that, and that was awesome to be able to do that online, even though I think KeyForge, in my opinion, is a much better game than Hearthstone, and it's much more unique in my opinion. That just kind of like, when I think about how useful and how much, like how fun it was to be able to just like, open up Hearthstone and play for a bit, there's a lot of things that appeal to me. And especially, again, as I mentioned, I'm going to throw back again to the fact that I just became a dad a few weeks ago. I don't have a whole lot of free time on my hands these days, and the idea of like, sometimes it's not easy to just meet up with someone for 2 or 3 hours and play KeyForge, but sometimes I only have time for one game, and I'm not going to invite someone over to play one game of KeyForge and then they leave, and you got to take your decks out, and there's shuffling that takes time in between and whatever, right? Playing online is going to be awesome because you just like open up the program, get right into it, you just pick your deck, it's ready to go. Everything's automated for you. If you don't know exactly how an ability works or something, you click on it, it's kind of, the game won't let you do things that aren't possible, right? So that's the big advantage to having this automated. You're going to be able to ideally upload like your decks that you actually have, and then you can play with those online, similarly that you would to the Crucible. But in the Crucible, part of the issue was, not issue, but one of the things that holds some people back is that you can upload any deck from the database. There's now a method in the Crucible that allows you to, that asks you to kind of like verify your deck through your account so that you know that you're playing against someone who actually has that deck, rather than just, looking up some championship winning deck online or something with a high SAS score, and then you're just running up against people who are playing with decks that they don't even have. I really like the idea of having an official platform through Fantasy Flight Games where everything is a bit more regulated, everything is a bit more official, and the idea, myself, sometimes I'm the type of person too who, sometimes I like being able to play a game, but I just don't have it in me to like socialize, right? Or I want to be listening to music or a podcast in the background, or I'm eating while I play or something like that. And the idea of being able to play an online game of KeyForge, which I love so much, while, not having to, again, plan a night around or invite someone over and whatnot. I'm just thrilled about this announcement. I can't wait to be able to try this out. There's nothing yet about, in terms of when it's going to be available. They kind of just, I think this was kind of like, again, they don't, Fantasy Flight wasn't, a lot of the time they've stayed kind of quiet, and people have complained in the past about like, oh, they don't tell us enough about the game, there aren't enough updates, or when it happens, it's like, this is coming out in a month or two, and why didn't you tell us sooner? I know friends who kind of are into the game or have thought about getting into it, but then feels like there's maybe not as much support for the game as they'd like, and all that kind of stuff. And I have to say that, I really appreciated this announcement from Fantasy Flight to come out and basically say, hey, this is terrible, this is bad news in some ways. We don't like to basically have to tell you that the algorithm's broken, but here's a couple of little like Easter eggs, little things to kind of show you that we're taking this seriously. And this takes me to not quite the final point of the video just yet, but just my thoughts overall on these announcements and the future of KeyForge is, again, it's been pretty easy to see a lot of people get negative about this. People have gone online, got really upset about this announcement, and personally, I'm trying to look at it from a pretty positive standpoint because for them to be that upfront first, you kind of know, oh, they're not just thinking about whether or not they want to continue the game. Like, they've already told us this set has been worked out. We've got the new set basically ready to go. We just need to fix the algorithm. And the fact that they're investing in this online implementation with the help of another company, you know that they're investing not only their time but their money into this game for it to hopefully be bigger and better than ever before. And they acknowledge that, like, the pandemic has hurt this game, right? Like, a lot of these competitive card, I mean, this is a unique card game. It's not quite the same as like Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon and whatnot. But a lot of these games do really live and die off of their, in-store tournaments and their people getting together face-to-face, and especially without having an online platform, the game really has suffered. Credit to them, they released a lot of these free, or I don't know if a lot, 2 or 3 of them, I can't remember, like print-and-play solo/co-op adventures that you could do with KeyForge throughout the pandemic to keep people interested. And, like, honestly, hats off to FFG for doing that. I think that was awesome. I haven't actually tried them myself yet, just part of it is that I really like the competitive back and forth, so when I did play, I was just going on the Crucible to play with a friend or whatnot. But yeah, it's it's easy to feel deflated about this overall, and kind of feel like, I guess the game's metaphorical tires have been slashed, and you're kind of just like, oh really? Like, I was hoping to get into this more, and now the game's on pause. But really, I want to try and stress as much as I can, like, try and think long-term, think about the future. And even though it kind of sucks right now, I really think that ultimately when this new set comes out and there's an online platform eventually, which is what, the designer Richard Garfield always wanted from the start. He mentioned it either before the game came out or when it first came out, and I think he has reiterated on a podcast since then about, like, how much he envisioned the online implementation being such a, like, integrated part of the game. I think we really have to try and set the disappointment aside for a second and think, really, ultimately, for the health of the game, it's going to be better. It's the same as when a board game publisher or what video game publisher or whatever in the industry comes out and says, like, hey, we're delaying a game, and I know people get upset, but would you rather get the game rushed just so that you can have it in your hands, or would you rather they admit that there's something wrong and take their time to make it right? And I'm always the type of person who's always going to say, take your time. I'd rather I can wait. I don't want to get something and be disappointed and then feel like I wasted my time and my money on it. I'd rather wait and get something and be a more polished product and something that I'm then going to be able to invest my time in and feel like, okay, it was worth the wait. And I'm not saying, let's say right now, that it's automatically going to be positive. You can wait, hold your breath, let's see how it turns out. The online implementation, for all I know, could have its own disappointments, whatever, but I think it's better that we save that kind of potential negativity for then. If let's try and give them the benefit of the doubt here. They've come out and been pretty upfront and given us some of these tidbits that are very encouraging about the future of the game. So yeah, I mean, for me personally, it was really tough to see. I was like, broken algorithm, are you kidding me? Like, the game's on pause, the new set's in the works, but there's like only one card revealed and we can't get it yet, and I was kind of a little disappointed. But after I thought about it and I kind of cooled off from my initial reaction, this is actually the best news I think I've ever heard for KeyForge. The fact that this online implementation is coming in tells me that they're ready to invest on a new level, and I think part of that is a credit to the community, for the people who run things like, again, the Crucible, Arcana online, where it's just like there's tons of new player guides and stuff like that. I could go on and list them, but it's, I think, thanks to the community that they've kind of seen, and the reaction to them releasing these cooperative solo adventures throughout the pandemic, that I think they've seen people love the game, and there's a lot of people who are either on the fence about jumping in at all, who haven't played, or there's people who have kind of bought a couple decks but they don't want to really invest more. And I think it's awesome that they've come out with this announcement to kind of hopefully convince us all, or at least some of us, that the game isn't going anywhere, and that it's going to come back hopefully bigger and better than ever. So that's it for my thoughts. As far as the kind of wider future of the game, it's hard to speculate, really. Again, I know some of you probably know more about this than I do. You guys have probably spent more time thinking about this, chatting with people about this, being involved in the community a little more directly than I've been able to in the past few months, and especially few weeks. So I'm curious to hear what you all think. How do you feel about these big changes? How do you feel about the new set, Winds of Exchange? I mean, 3 houses rotating out is a big deal. We've never seen this big of a shift in the first place. And the ones that are staying in, I mean, Star Alliance and Saurian, as it is, were, they only came in the 3rd set. Worlds Collide, Unfathomable just came in the last set, so they're, fairly new still. Then we're getting the new house, and then Brobnar is coming back, who we haven't seen in a while since Worlds Collide is where they rotated out, actually. So they've been gone for 2 sets. Sanctum was in Dark Tidings, but they missed a set at some point before then, so I feel like this is going to be a big potential turning point for the game, where we're going to see a lot of changes, the token cards and everything. personally, I'm really excited about the future of KeyForge, and I think, again, let's try and stay positive. Let's try and spend this time speculating, play games online in the Crucible, go out there, explore these other resources for the game online. And maybe that's too hard for you to do without knowing how soon the set's coming out or how soon the online, but then I shouldn't say plead you, but I encourage you to don't give up on the game yet. Don't go getting rid of your decks. Wait a little while. If you're too frustrated by this too, just try and set that aside for a bit and wait and see. And for those of you who are really passionate about the game, really into it, I'm really curious to hear what kind of stuff do you guys either expect to see or hope to see in the future of KeyForge. And again, what are your thoughts on all these announcements? Am I too positive? Am I looking at this as too much of an optimist? Do you have more of maybe a realist or a pessimist type view? Yeah, is there anything I've missed about this? There's all kinds of rumors, there's kinds of forums that I don't sort of take part in as much for KeyForge, so if there's anything I missed or anything that you guys can think of, I'm very curious to hear. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I'm going to do my best to have some more KeyForge content coming out in the next couple months whenever I can. Just bear with me here. Things will continue to pick up on this channel in terms of KeyForge in the future, especially when, the new set comes out or there's more cards revealed and that sort of thing. But I do have a couple other videos in the works that should be coming out in the next little while. So yeah, thank you again so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.